Hello, everybody. Guess what? It's your favorite CB Bowman. And I'm here with our new platform, Courage to Leap and Lead. And I've had some amazing guests, and I think this is my 100th show. Wait, we need to celebrate. Okay. And of course, as always, I have an outstanding guest. And you know what? She's so outstanding that I'm going to interview her in two parts. And so you'll listen to the first part and then we'll air the second part, not at the same day. This will encourage you to come back and listen to me some more. So we're going to do this in two separate parts. The first part, we're going to talk about her life and how she grew up and actually what gave her the courage to do what she's doing now. And then the second part is we'll talk about what she's doing now to make a major difference on the lives of people who suffer with mental challenges, shall we say. I met this woman at Renaissance Weekend, not Renaissance Festival. Don't get it twisted, sister. Renaissance Weekend, which is really an American think tank. And you meet the most incredible people, invitation only. And who would have known there were 250 people the weekend that I went? And you know the word synchronicity? My book is coming out on courage at the end of this year, so watch for it. And synchronicity put Lane in my path. She has the most fabulous stories about courage in her life and the courage she's had to take care and guide others. So, without further ado, let me introduce Lane Gardner, my new BFF. Lane, welcome.
Thank you. I am so thrilled to be here. We've been giggling since even before we started airing this, and you're my new BFF too. We've just, I feel like meeting over the summer was definitely synchronicity, meant to be for sure.
Absolutely. So first, just give us the name of your company, and then we're going to talk about you growing up in this part A.
So I have a therapeutic arts nonprofit called Thread.
Thread. So you'll get the meaning of thread as we go along. It's a powerful name. When I first heard it, I said, what? Does she teach sewing classes?
Yep.
Yeah. I got it. It's a powerful name for what she's doing. But let's start at the beginning of time. Tell us, where did you grow up? Tell us about your parents. Give us the 411 on you, Lane.
Well, thank you. It is a bit of a winding story, but I was born into a military family. My father was a medevac pilot during the Vietnam War, and he and my mother were high school sweethearts. And I have an older sister who, came along quite a few, 4 years or so before me.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
I can't believe our connection. My family, my dad was in the military.
Okay.
He's laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery.
So is mine.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Are they near each other?
We'll have to find out. Let's take a trip.
And my parents met in high school.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Continue.
So anyway, my father was sort of coming and going as he was, stationed over in Vietnam, taking several tours of duty. And so, my early life was a lot of moving around. Honestly, we were stationed at different army bases. And, there was sort of just this element of, sort of always on the go, right? Always sort of, having to pick up and go. And unfortunately, when my father returned home from Vietnam, I was about 4 years old, and the trauma that he was in, in those days, in the early 70s, there wasn't a lot of language for what soldiers were coming home with. And, now we know it to be unbelievable, extreme symptoms of PTSD. And so he wasn't in good shape when he came home. And so my parents divorced within about a year after that. It was, my mother really didn't know what she was looking at, as I'm sure so many family members in that era, or even now, you just not sure what you're looking at, and what the symptoms are, and what the effects are that are so extreme. And so
But
life.
even now, sorry to interrupt you, but I have to say this. Even now that we know what it is, it's still ignored. It's
Mhm.
still not, hold on,
Yes.
guys, I'm just getting this call. Let me just turn that off. Sorry, guys, I forgot to turn off my phone. But even now that we know the trauma that soldiers go through, every once in a while, we'll hear a breakthrough in the news about really how they're being treated.
Yeah.
And it's pathetic. These,
Yes.
these men and women who are protecting our lives, our country, even the gift of being able to say and think what we want, come back as damaged human beings.
Mhm.
I mean, who could go through that amount of destruction that they are doing for their country and not come back a changed human being?
It's astonishing. I'd never heard that many stories that my father would speak about what he endured during his tour of duties. But what I did hear, it was so harrowing, being shot down, his helicopter, having to float, in the underbrush of a river for a week, waiting to be rescued. I mean, that kind of stuff I know is not a unique story for people who serve. And, not to mention, um, you know, um, sort of being conditioned to be a killing machine, right? I mean,
Yes, yes,
that has got to
yes.
mess, that alone psychologically has got to completely mess with your sense of humanity and your sense of connection to other people. And my father um, was studying to be a doctor at the time that he was drafted. And so he was able to, live out some of that passion by being a medevac pilot and, rescuing the wounded. And, he did pass away at a very young age from, the impact of PTSD, but he was awarded almost every single honor for the military, Purple Heart, Silver Star, you name it, because of the courage. This is a show about courage, right? And the unfortunate part about it is that he didn't get to choose that. That wasn't a decision that he got to
Yes.
make, to go be in that position. And so I have always felt such sadness, and he's been gone over 20 years now, but I've always felt such sadness for him that his life was really taken from him,
Yes.
in terms
Yeah.
of, having to serve his country, which of course is, an honorable thing to protect, the people of a country. But when I see the fact that it really robbed him of his life, um, it's hard to square that sometimes,
You know, I've never thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right. It robbed him of his life. It
Mhm.
robs others of their lives.
Yeah.
And there's no preparation. I mean, think about it. You come from the United States. How much war during their lifetime have they experienced? How much death have they experienced?
Mhm.
Killing of another human being. What
Yeah.
can ever prepare you for that? Nothing.
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 And all of a sudden, you're placed in a position of defending your country, defending your life, defending your colleagues, surviving, survival. And I know for my father, he also had to face racism in the midst of that.
Yes.
And I remember being so angry at his funeral, thinking, you robbed him of his being a human being, and now you're going to lay him to rest with honors. How
Yeah.
does that square, as you say?
Yep.
It just didn't with me.
It's tough.
It just didn't.
Yeah.
Right?
And to your point, it not only is it such a tragedy for the men and women who are, serving their country, but it also greatly impacts their circles of family and
Oh,
friends.
yes.
And, you know, I I never really got to have much of a relationship with my own father for many of these reasons, and so I hold that grief, I hold that loss, for no fault of my own, right? But and this again is, I'm so not unique in this is
No,
something that
you know,
so many people
nobody thinks of
go
the
through.
children.
you know
Nobody thinks of
yeah,
the children.
yeah.
I remember when my father was sent over for the Cuban crisis, and
Mhm.
I was old enough to understand. And I lived for years and years thinking we were going to be bombed because of Cuba. And where will my father be? And he was not reachable,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So how would my mom take care of us? And I just thought every day looking in the sky, thinking, oh, are we going to be hit? Such fear.
Fear, yeah.
You don't realize is happening in the minds of a child.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it is such an impact, circles and circles and circles of impact, it,
Yes.
it really does.
Mhm. And
So,
so what happened that
so,
night
um,
home?
so my mother, took us back to where her parents, lived, where she grew up. And, we spent about 9 months hanging out before my mother remarried.
Mm,
And my mother remarried someone who ended up being such a source of uh, challenge for me in my life. And she joined a religious cult, and that's been something that I've had to really work with, not only just my own experience as a young person and in the damaging ways that impacted me, but also understanding how my mother fell into that,
I was going to ask you that
Mhm.
question.
Yeah. So
What
I
did
think
you understand?
I I think that really, I can understand that she was coming out of a very, very painful situation, of divorcing with my father and all of the, unbelievable experiences that she went through in terms of being in that sort of military situation, and also the impact that it had on my father. I think there were probably, I
Let
think
me
there was probably, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so okay. How did the impact of your dad's PTSD manifest
Um,
for your
he
mom?
he used a lot of substances.
Mm,
There was a lot of addiction issues. There was, sort of this grasping at anything outside of himself. There was infidelity. There was, incredible rage, incredible depression, incredible sort of inability to just to be um, functional, I think,
Mhm, mhm.
and so I think that, ultimately what ended up sort of just happening was that everything just broke down,
Yes.
and um, I think that for her, I think there was kind of, it was so unexplainable, like I said, I don't think that there was much context for what was going on, in that time. And so, looking back, I think my mother was, searching for answers, searching for something that could give her hope and a reason for things,
And
and
to feel
so,
protected.
and to feel protected,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
to not have to continue to go through the pain of healing, right?
Right.
And I think that, this is a whole nother topic for a whole nother session,
Mhm.
but I think that sometimes, these extreme religious beliefs can pull you out of having to do the work of healing, and sort of, offer these blanket answers, which I think is very appealing to so many of us, right? Like, oh, I don't want to
Make
have to figure this
decisions.
out.
Yes.
Somebody
Yeah.
just tell me what to do. Somebody
Yes.
tell me what to do. Tell me what to think.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's where my mother was at the time. And so, that's where we ended up. We sort of got, within a year, we got carted off to this cult location, which was, sort of set up in the middle of the country, in a college campus, is actually where this whole thing was sort
Did
of
they
being done
find
out of.
her? Did they find her or did she find them?
Um, I think that a friend of hers from her hometown was attending these meetings for this particular organization and invited her, and I think it just was, sort of one thing after the next. I think that through those meetings, I think is how she met my stepfather. And I think it just, it was all, I was very young. It all was very quick and very, I don't have a lot of, you know, day-to-day memories of it. I definitely have some, singular memories here and there. My older sister and I were sort of just tossed into this brand new world. And I really can't sort of emphasize enough how much damage being in that sort of a cult-like environment does to a person, especially to a young person.
Mhm.
Um, just a little side note, and I know we'll talk about this more as we go, but my mother was a musician, and on my mother's side of the family, they were all self-taught musicians. And
Mm.
so alongside all of this, mayhem, which I'll talk about a little bit more, was always this sort of vibrant creativity. And I inherited that from that lineage. And so the reason why I'm bringing it up now is because I sort of came into the world with this, vibrant creativity. And so
Mhm.
the impact of being a 4 or 5 year old in this sort of cult environment was absolutely soul crushing. You're sort of brainwashed into believing that what you think or who you are isn't the right way to be, and you're sort of, cultivated to become something other than yourself, which is, deadly to any person's soul, regardless of the age. When you're not in a place of, feeding your true self and helping that to develop and grow, um those vibrant, creative, innovative parts of each of us get shuffled away somewhere. And that happened to me over the course of my childhood.
So how was that for those of us who have not experienced that? Um, how is that done? How is your sense of self stripped from you? How is that sense of learning and exploration taken away from you?
Fear. fear is the number one strategy that's being used, which is creating a sense of otherness, like we're different from the people out in the world. We are the people who have the right answers and everybody else out there doesn't. You cannot be a good person without this connection to us and to the divine God that they had created, which in
Mm,
my opinion, I have a very different belief of the divine, which is not an entity that uses fear to control people. So it's really about sort of breaking down this sense that we can advocate for ourselves. We have all, I truly believe, and this is a very hard one belief over many, many years of a difficult journey, but I truly believe that we have the wisdom and the answers within us,
mhm,
and
mhm,
it's a bit of a collaborative journey with mystery or the divine or God or whatever that definition is to each of us. But in a cult-like environment, that you're absolutely made to believe that you of in and of yourself can do nothing. You in and of yourself are not worthy of love or of being kept safe, or that you need to go through this belief system or this structure of this hierarchy of cult leaders in order to be safe, to be taken care of, to be of value. And it's incredibly scary and it's incredibly damaging. And it's sort of you sort of are made to believe that everything outside of this tiny little world is to be feared, is to be you know is not good enough for what they are trying to teach in
mm, I
this
understand.
very isolating environment. Um so it's very dangerous, and it's very dangerous to the human soul. It's very dangerous to anyone who has a lot to offer the world, and I think that we all have innate beautiful gifts in our own way, and that destruction of the belief and the uncovering of your own gifts is something that happens in situations like this.
Thank you for explaining that because I remember Jonestown, as many of us did. And
Yeah.
for the life of me, I couldn't understand it. I
Hmm.
said, why would people want to do this
Yeah.
to themselves? Why would they want to kill themselves en masse? And I
Yeah.
never had an answer.
Hmm. I think there's an element of this sort of do or die mentality that gets promoted, which is, you have to live for your beliefs. You have to stand up for your beliefs. Um, there's no black, there's no middle ground. It's only black or white. And, I have a hard time with that kind of thinking. I'm someone who believes in what I've coined for myself as the third road, which is learning about each end of the spectrum, and then what is the best third road that brings in the most beneficial pieces of both sides of the coin. And so in this black and white thinking, in this sort of almost zealot like thinking, there is this element where if I'm not living out this belief system that I've been indoctrinated to promote and live, and live with, then I can't exist.
Yeah.
I have
Mhm.
failed my God. I have failed my mission, my belief. And so I think that's how it happens,
Mhm.
that there is this sort of almost a martyr martyrdom type mentality that takes over.
Yeah, I could see the progression for your mom. I mean, being hit with, this is not the person I married. What did I do wrong? I've made some wrong decisions that have created this,
Yeah,
et cetera, et cetera. And then coming to meet somebody who says, here's a place for all your answers.
that's right.
And you walk into this and it's, oh, what a relief. I don't have to make any decisions anymore. I'm
Yeah,
safe.
yeah,
And that's the farthest thing from being safe.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that after quite a few years of growing up in that environment, that safety totally unraveled. And I mean, obviously it wasn't safe, but my mother and my stepfather ended up actually getting kicked out of this
Wow.
situation because they it wasn't like they were necessarily like um not believing in the beliefs, but they started to challenge the way it was being done. And so what happened after we were outed from this is we went into what I to me feels like, as somebody looking back at my childhood, is like kind of the dark ages of my life, which was late elementary through high school, where we were sort of living alongside a mentally ill alcoholic step parent who was also a religious zealot.
Well,
And
wait,
so,
now, okay, I'm getting confused.
okay,
This was your stepdad
yeah,
who had been kicked out,
hmm,
but he was still a religious zealot.
yes, yes. And so I think he sort of went into his own, world of delusion about his own beliefs and his own, mission for what he felt he was supposed to, how he was supposed to help the world, and, sort of these kind of grand delusions of saving people, basically.
Well,
But
I could see where, especially like for your mom, who felt like she was in a protected environment, um, and she would believe in this, in the beliefs of the system, to now be told you're no longer going to be protected. You
yeah,
have to leave.
yep,
And then that probably spun her into a world of, what do I do now?
yeah,
I've been protected, what I believed in
hmm,
twice now
yeah,
is not reality
yeah, that's right.
for her.
That's right. And I think that the early feeling of stability in meeting and marrying my stepfather, over time gave way to, what were much more deep-seated issues with him in terms of mental health and substance use and this sort of grandiose religious belief. I think that she, to your point, landed in an even almost even worse situation, on the other side, because
Well,
there was no safety.
yeah, and what's ironic is she ended up with a second husband who turned out to be like the first husband that she left, except now you had the added of the religious beliefs.
Yeah, yeah,
My
yeah,
heart goes out for her.
yeah. It was, but what's interesting though, um, my mother was not solely without power. I will say
Oh,
that, I think that she herself wanted to continue to believe these things.
sure.
And so I think that she, made decisions to stay in these bad situations because
Um,
of the beliefs, because of the fear of perhaps admitting that she was wrong, perhaps admitting that she had made a mistake, perhaps of having to face, a lot of difficult experiences that would require, um, healing and examining her belief system,
Mhm.
and so, my sadly, my mother passed away about a year and a half ago, and I've definitely had to do some soul searching for the choices that my mother made, and the ways in which she was a great mom and the ways in which she was not a great mom. And that's kind of a hard space to hold. And I know there's so many of us out there who have been in situations where their parent made choices that were extremely damaging to the children, but still were good people and offered
Mhm.
love and support in the ways that they could. And so, I'm on a healing journey for sure, in terms of, my the way that I feel about my mother, and certainly since her passing. Um, but the process of being in these situations growing up for me ultimately, led me to fight for my true gifts and talents in the long run, because I sort of had them crushed out of me. And I eventually got to the point where I was sort of like, I'm done with this. Like, as a teenager, as I was heading off to college, I kind of couldn't handle the um the destruction anymore, and so what
Well,
I ended up.
hold up now.
Mhm.
First of all, I'm sorry for your loss, you
Thank
know.
you.
My next question, I'm just gonna raise this up a little bit because it looks like I'm looking down. Um, so when your mom left, she stayed married to her second husband with all of this going on.
Yes.
How did you survive all of this? How did she protect you from all of what was going on?
She didn't. So we were subject to that, my sisters and I. The way that I survived was being involved in the arts. And that was really my escape. You know, like I said earlier, my early experiences of making music with my family as a child, and this sort of spontaneous music making that really taught me about the power of music to rise above all of these difficult experiences and all these differing beliefs and all these arguments and everything that were happening. I learned from a very early age that music and creativity was a way for people to connect. It was a way for people to feel better. It was a way for people to be together, beyond everything that they disagreed on. And so, as I got into middle school and into high school, that was my escape. I started getting involved in the local community theater. I started, taking dance lessons. I started taking voice lessons, and that was a very different world. That world of the arts is inherently a safe space, right? There's support for everyone to be themselves, to express their gifts and talents, to connect around these shared gifts and passions. And so that was sort of my salvation, my saving grace, my sort of my the boat that sort of carried me out of these very difficult waters. And um that was the way that I survived. I
Okay, but
started getting involved
hold
in
up now. So how many years were you in the cult?
that. 6, I believe.
So you were 10 years old when you came out. A
Hmm.
10-year-old from the time that you went to what, high school?
Hmm.
Um, how did, I mean, at 10, did you know that music was the way to protect yourself? Did
Yes.
you use music then?
Yes, I
Ah,
did. I knew that I could, you know, being in the arts, I was doing a lot of performing, and even as a kid, I was singing in, community centers and in show, like in community theater. I was, performing at churches and that sort of thing. And um, I knew very early on that that gave me a bit of like a safety cushion, that if I was, singing and making people happy with my creativity, then I got a little bit of a, I don't want to say a free pass, but I definitely had a little bit of a wiggle room to have support. My mother would take me to these lessons. My mother would take me to these performances. My family would come and see the performances. And so, it definitely gave me a little bit of I hate to say it, but like a little bit of like a free pass. Only in that way.
were
Only in
you
that way.
were
Yeah.
you allowed to sing and perform while you were in the cult?
Well, there were performances of, these very curated, religious plays or whatever that I do remember participating in some
Mm-hmm.
when I was there. But it was really that my mother, I think, kind of was going back to music for herself to help herself feel better. After we had, left the cult, she started writing some music. And I think that it was kind of just everybody, kind of had this space for music in our lives, even though all of this insanity was still ensuing. It was a bit of a safety net for sure.
What fascinates me, Lane, is how somebody at the age of 10 and younger made the connection between happiness through music and despair through being in the cult. How does one at that young age mentally make a connection that this is my road for saving myself?
Well, the thing that comes to mind for me is something that I think, most people can relate to, is when you're in a dire circumstance, you have to search within yourself for what do you have access to help yourself, right? If you're in a dire circumstance, you do that. You look around and you look within and you say, what do I have here? What, from a place of desperation, from a place of a lack of safety. And I think that that's how, as a young person, I just had to search for what is going to help me. What's going to, how am I going to stay alive? Literally, and I searched, I think, within myself to find that I had these gifts and talents. And that was what I was going to use to get myself through. And we do that as people, right? We look for the tools that we have within ourselves.
Not necessarily, because
Okay.
there are many people who I'm going to say are not as fortunate as you to be able to look inside and say, what can I pull out to save me? I mean,
Mhm.
is that was a breakthrough event for you that many people don't have the opportunity. They look inside and they say, there's no place for me to go. There's no
Mhm.
place for me to grab onto. There's no lifeboat
Mhm.
that I have. So I believe that yours was an exceptional experience and opportunity, an exceptional thing that you were able to do for yourself. It took exceptional courage to be able to say, I know I have within me something that will save me. I need to find it.
Mhm.
That, my dear, is courage. At the age of 10? Come on. Yeah. And actually, even younger than that, because, 4 years prior to that is when you were brought into the cult.
Mhm.
That I wish there was a way that you could say to people who cannot find that strength, this is how you find it.
Well, I think we will get to that because I do believe, and as we're alluding to, this has become my life's work, right? And this, I have been doing this for many, many, many years, and it's evolved and grown. I do believe, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of young people and with adults, and I do believe that each of us has that lifeline somewhere within us, and it's different for each of us. It doesn't have to be a musical talent. It's just something that is our true essence, that has strength and has courage. And I do think that with um, the support to uncover that we each of us has that beautiful, beautiful gift within us that's unique to us.
I think I totally agree with you. I think where I'm going is, where do you find the strength to say enough, as you said before, and I'm going to find the answer?
Mhm.
That's the critical point.
Yeah.
So many are missing. We would not have the turbulence that we have in this war. We would not have the incredible upswing of mental illness, the recognition even of mental illness, if people were able to do that. That is the secret sauce,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and how do we direct that? Certainly, the people that you touch in your work have developed through your work that recipe. But how do how do we get that recipe out to the masses so that they are willing to go and get the ingredients, put them together, bake them,
Yeah.
and have solution in their life? And with that, audience, I'm going to say stay tuned to part 2. But before we go, Lane, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you to sing us out of this episode of Talking to Lane Gardner.
I will tell you what I am going to sing is a song that I'm actually recording tomorrow for a beautiful, beautiful friend of mine who passed away over the spring. And before he died, he asked me to sing this at his memorial service. And I think that it's so apropos to what we're talking about now, because I think that each of us, as much as we have gone through, there are elements of our lives that there is a component of grace that we experience that carry us through such difficult times. So I will end with Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a soul like me. I was lost, but now I'm found. 'Twas blind, but now I see.
Stay tuned to part 2.